Thank you so much. This is great. This is great. This is surreal to be on this side of a microphone at Plywood. I've been coming to this conference for probably 7 or 8 years, and thank you. We can sit.
There we go.
Okay. We can be comfortable.
This is just easier now.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So it's great to be on this side, and I'm excited to kind of talk about designing with purpose. It's going to mimic a lot of what Lindy said.
It must be into something, right?
Yeah,
okay.
that's because it's important stuff. I think architecture and design has learned a lot from the UX process, which is a good thing. Architecture has been around for a long time, and so rethinking our process is not something we do very well, and we've learned a lot from other industries in that way. But we're going to start talking a little bit about purpose and understanding how it relates to the architecture design process and how that then can be pushed out into other design processes as well. So as we start talking about purpose, purpose is a buzzword. We talk about it a lot. We see it a lot reflected in pop culture, how we purchase pizza, to how we use our phone. Purposity is an amazing app that everyone should look into if you're not familiar with it. But it allows you to use your phone to donate to causes in your area that are worthwhile and purposeful, which is all great. But it's everywhere, and the reason it's everywhere is really because humanity is searching for purpose. It's part of our personhood, our humanity is searching for purpose and impact in our life, and it's not, none of these things are bad. They're all good. But what we want to do is influence the design process, starting with thinking about purpose. When we start a design process, a lot of people think that we might start by looking at Pinterest or looking at a Google image search to see how other people have solved similar problems in the past. And that's certainly a part of the design process to understand what has been already done, but not really what we want to start with. There's a lot of people who might think that we start looking at just form and purely a formal exercise of understanding what shapes or sculpture we want to engage with. And Frank Gehry has done an amazing job of taking the built environment and what we expect to see from that and flipping it on its head and creating some amazing works. And form has an amazing part of what design is, but it's, again, not where we want to start. And then perhaps the least emotional way to start a design process is to look at a spreadsheet, which is, again, for better or worse, a part of what we have to do sometimes to understand ratios, budgets, performas, all the things that really make things work. But it's not, again, where we want to start with the design process. What we want to do is really put purpose in the lead of the design process at the beginning of the conversation, like Lindy mentioned, so that people are the focus, not spreadsheets, not form, not problem solving, but people.
So by now, you probably know that we're designers and architects, but we really pride ourselves in building stories and creating experiences. And experience is another buzzword, right? Like, we see purpose everywhere, and now we see experience everywhere, and nobody really knows what it is. But hopefully, by the end of this talk, we'll be into something. So, yes, for us, purpose starts with experience, and this is going to resonate from the previous talk because, yes, experience is human. That's one of the big definitions for us of experience, and we really believe that experience is attached to remarkable memories. Either if it's a good one or a bad one, if you remember it, hopefully it was an experience. So if you walk out of here and you remember anything from this talk, maybe it was an experience. Hopefully it's not going to be a bad one, right? Like, hopefully it's going to be remarkable in a good way. So memories make us human as well, and so are intentions. So this is how we start design process. This is like you might say, it's like, yes, very common sense. Purpose is intention. Yes, it is, but for us, it's intentionally thinking about what people are doing, about a culture, about the community. A lot of organizations come to us trying to build that sense of belonging. And it doesn't start with space. It starts with purpose and people and figuring out what is that thing that we need that is not necessarily rooted in form and is not necessarily rooted in metrics. It starts like way beyond that. And yes, we believe that design has the power to transform everyday experiences if we start with intention and purpose in the very core of it. And yes, we are Gensler and we're big, but we're local too. You just heard, like, we love collaborating with people in the community, with the local community. But we know that we're big and we have a big impact. We don't put this number out here just to say this is how wonderful we are. It's because when you say that 200 million people experience a Gensler project every day around the world, that's a huge responsibility. If we screwed up, then the impact is huge as well. So let us walk you through how we actually think about the design process when you don't start with space. We'd start with human behavior. And the first thing in human behavior is expectation. So you're going to see how this pie builds up. And it starts with expectation and anticipating the needs of the people. And then it goes into interaction. And interaction is a lot about connection. It's a lot about, like, why we're here today, trying to connect to each other. How do we create those environments in which people connect? And at the end, maybe you cannot read it very well, but it's all about space. At the end of the day, yes, we're architects and designers, and it lands in space. So when we try to define what experience means to us, is a combination of these three things. It's about expectation, it's about interaction, and it's about space, but always having that soul core in the middle, and is intention and purpose. And you might ask, like, okay, experience is a buzzword, and why it matters. And we believe that that's the future of design, that designing for the human experience is the future of design. Engaging the senses and emotions is the only way we can build environments that are going to resonate with people. And yes, we all thrive on meaningful experiences. Most likely, that's why we're all here today. And we all love sharing those experiences. Some of you might be doing it right now, but we love connecting. We love telling other people what we're doing. That's when the magic really happens. And we work building a lot of workplaces, a lot of environments for people to go to work. But no longer work is a 9 to 5. You're probably sending a text message right now, and that's work. So when you take that out of the equation, that you need a built environment to be 9 to 5 and attached to a desk, then what is it if you can do it anywhere? If you no longer need that infrastructure, the only reason why we believe people are going to come back to the office is because you're providing an experience, because you're providing something else. You're providing something that makes people feel like they belong there, they have a community, they can exchange ideas in different ways. And today's top talent wants more than a paycheck. We really believe, and a lot of you might find this very familiar, we no longer want just a paycheck. That paycheck needs to be meaningful. More and more we see that people resonate with brands that are aligned with their values. So if you don't create spaces in which that really represent those values and that purpose, there is no reason why people would come work for you. And that's like the big part of that's our big challenge.
So this, again, we'll kind of harken back to Lindy's slide. This is a little less interesting, and it's uninteresting on purpose. This is kind of the typical design process that architects find themselves buried into. And it's all based on contractual language. This is based on hundreds of years of just kind of doing the same thing over and over again, where we
Hundreds?
Sure.
Sure, okay.
Yeah, this process. I'm standing by it. And so what this process is really about is talking about problem solving from the most generic point when we start over here in program analysis, and then getting more and more detailed as we go through the process. This chart is about check-ins with a client to make sure you're on the right track. This chart is about a linear progression that ends in construction administration, where you make sure that what was built by the contractor reflects what was designed. This is not a very emotional chart. This is not a very exciting chart. And a lot of these terminology, I doubt that many of us could tell me the difference between schematic design and design development. It's not very human-centered. And so we still have to do a lot of that stuff. We're still contractually obligated by a lot of this stuff. And one day we'll start rethinking everything. But what we really want to start rethinking is how we start a process, and really starting with people at the center. We want to ask questions, ask a lot of questions, do a lot of listening, so that we can get clarity of vision from a group, so we can gather collective input from different user groups in the company, so we can gain these key insights to see opportunities, so we can evaluate scenarios, test their viability. And then we have, at that point, a collective vision. And that collective vision can be really defined here and can translate into that how and into that what. So we're delivering these purposeful experiences. If we can have our clients give us a blue sky vision of not just where they are today, but where they want to be in the future, we can start, understanding the culture, the interactions, the expectations that they have, and put that to work in the design process. Then we can really start to make purposeful experiences that are human-centered.
Okay, so now we have walked you through like kind of the theory part of it. We design with purpose, we ask the big why, we don't like contracts, we hate the language. It's not people-centered, there are no emotions, no senses, no experience. But we have 3 projects that we want to share with you today, and those 3 projects, everything about them is about that collective vision and asking those tough questions. So we're gonna start with Plywood, and by now, hopefully you know that they're moving next door, literally next door, in the next 12 weeks, right?
I don't like to put a timeline.
Okay, let's not put it in video. So Plywood is moving next door, and this is a fantastic project for us because when we are talking about building meaningful experiences, this is it. What an exciting group to work with. And this is kind of the messy part of it. We bring everyone into the table. We want to bring people that have very diverse opinions and that are going to provide a feedback that necessarily Jeff wouldn't bring to the table, that are part of the community or part of the board, or were past Plywood members, or maybe like you are future Plywood members. So the process of discovering and uncovering is a big one. And like we said in the beginning, it's about building the story, right? The right story for the right client. So a lot of this has nothing to do with space, but it's about the lifestyle that they want to have in there, the people that they want to bring into the space, the expectations that this space is going to cover, not for what's happening today, but how it's going to happen for the future. And like we said, we always try to dig a little deeper, ask the big why, and some of these are uncomfortable questions because we talk about the challenges, we talk about the superpowers, and we know that Plywood has many superpowers and many heroes, but they also have a kryptonite, and they also have things that don't let Jeff sleep at night, and we have to talk about them. We have to talk about them to find the real purpose. So as you can see in this picture, Jeff is pretty disrupted. We were probably asking some tough questions, and he was like, what the fuck? Why did I even invited these guys into the adventure? I'm not supposed to start.
No.
I knew that was going to happen. So here we're asking some tough questions, and
I want my daughters to be able to watch this too, Carolina.
I just ruined that for them. Okay. So we discovered together, and it is not a surprise that when we built Principles with Plywood, everything was about people. It was about how is this going to connect them, inspire them, support them, and empower them, empower their visions. So our collective vision is that North Star, that everything when the project goes wrong or we're over budget or we cannot find the right partners, this is supposed to be the thing that you go back to and you're like, yes, that's right. This is why we're building this. It's because we need to support in this hackable space many visions that are going to connect those social entrepreneurs to make better possible. So when you go back to that, it's always such a powerful thing to get everything back on track. So our concepts were never attached necessarily to space or form. They were always driven by purpose, and they always landed in space. So this is actually the space right next door. And if you didn't visit it in the tour today, you should tomorrow. So the space is supporting all these different activities. It's supposed to be hackable in a way that just like this, it's supposed to serve many, many different missions and the different paths that people go through the space is supposed to serve small organizations, but it's supposed to serve organizations as they grow into the space as well. So at the end of the day, yes, we're hoping that the Sunken Magic and all the spaces that are part of the new Plywood space will make better possible.
Yeah, and I just want to say that when Jeff called me about a year and a half ago to pitch this idea to work on this project with him, I was all on board just because I've always wanted to work with Jeff and his team and Plywood in general. But I will say I was also excited because we all need purposeful design, and we need to work on projects that have purpose behind them. And because I know that this kind of purpose is contagious. It's helpful for not just me personally, but people who are working on the project, and even just having it in the office and talking about this with everyone has been a real benefit to us as a company and as a culture and as a community as well. Is Plywood an easy one for us to talk about purpose with?
Yes.
Yes, it is easy for us to talk about purpose with Plywood. Most of our clients are not Plywood. We do a lot of work for a lot of different kind of companies, but I wanted to share the next one is actually looking at how we designed a space for ourselves, not necessarily in Atlanta, but for Gensler anyway. And so this is going to be our Gensler London office, which is our newest office. I actually don't have professional photography of this in here, but I do want to talk a little bit about the idea of collective genius and how that helped give a framework to the design process. So when you're doing projects for yourself, obviously there's not as much discovery involved in it, but there's still a lot of effort that needs to be placed into defining the problem and understanding what the people are. The people are still the center of this process. But this office, and as well as most Gensler offices, are one that are very team-based in the way that they function. They have different creative platforms that they need to bridge the gap between. They want to encourage a synergistic mindset where everyone is kind of working together toward a common good, and they want to empower their employees. And so what that helped create was a collective vision that says this: build a creative platform empowering people to shape their environment. This became our purpose statement that drove the way that things were organized. And so we created a kind of kit of parts that reflected the different ways that the team needed to work together. And then understanding how that kit of part can be rearranged for different phases of that process that we talked about earlier, and how during the discovery process you can have it arranged in one way that's more collaborative, and during the documentation process you can change your space out. And then really looking at how we can take those different scenarios, capture them all together, link them together with social spaces that encourage a lot of interaction and a lot of socialization, and that became the kind of driver for the space. So the space has become, it's just recently opened about a month ago. It's really a space that has that encourages interaction, these kind of casual encounters that people have. Casual encounters, our research has shown that it drives innovation in an amazing way, just encouraging people to get up from their workspace and walk toward areas, down common corridors, down community or connecting stairs like this, where you can see what other project teams are doing. You're visually connected with them. You can talk with them. You can run into them and ask them, "Hey, I sent you an email. Did you get that email? What do you think about that?" And have those encounters, so we're not just walking down dimly lit corridors or those kind of spaces. And also, it's important for us to give space for play, because work is not just about work. It's about socialization and that connection we have in the community of people that we're around. Like it or not, we are at work a lot of our day still, and that connection and socialization is really important. The final project we wanted to share with you is a project for an ad agency that at the time was called Irwin Pinland. This is in Greenville, South Carolina, and the company was spread between 3 different buildings. There was a lot of space. There's a lot of siloed work going on, but yet at the same time, their motto was "Unthink everything." And so we really wanted to help them unthink what they were doing and how they were working, and reimagine what their space could be. And for Irwin Pinland, unthink everything is really, I mean, it's their motto. It's also, it's actually how they work. This is an ad agency that's not just looking at print or online ads. They are looking at experience design as well. And so this is representative of a process that they did with Denny's, actually that combined Denny's culture and gaming culture. And so they literally took apart an Atari gaming system, reworked it for a customized Denny's gaming experience, and then filmed people coming to Denny's and playing their game and broadcasting on YouTube, and they got an amazing response to this. But it really signifies their ability to take apart a problem. So when we were diving into understanding who they are as a culture, who they are as a people, how they work, we discovered they're really tinkerers. They're doers. They're makers. They are physically involved. They have a green room, a green screen room, video, every imaginable thing that you can do in an ad agency, they're doing. And so we needed a space that reflected that. And so yes, we did eventually get to understanding how people had solved different problems before, looking at precedent imagery, and understanding how that can be applied to their space as well. But what we came up with was, and actually I should mention that they were going through a rebranding. So this is like Unthink Everything was touching every aspect of this company. So they eventually, now they're called EP & Co. So EP & Co's new workplace brings a community of creatives together under one roof to unfetter their thinking and propel new ideas.
Can I tell one story real quick, super fast?
Coffee shop, go.
Okay, coffee shop, yes. One of the big challenges and why this vision was so important to bring them together was because when we got to EP, they were telling us, Greenville is not that big, downtown Greenville is not that big, and they had a couple of different warehouses in downtown Greenville, and they would go to the same coffee shops, and people wouldn't know if they would see a familiar face, but they wouldn't really know if they work for EP or not. And for us was like, well, that's challenge number one. Your people don't know each other. So bringing them under one roof and uncovering and discovering what was the core of their culture was a big thing and a big driver for them.
Yeah, and I think that shaped a lot of of some of the decisions we made. For example, they have 2 floors of space, but we really, and some of the things that we typically do is put some social spaces on both floors, but really what we ended up doing is putting their main social hub on the bottom floor, the smallest floor, to force people on the upper floor to go through these red stairs to get down to the social space on the lower floor. So people were, again, encouraged to have those casual encounters. The space itself is fairly minimal, it's fairly restrained, and that's because they wanted the ability to rebrand themselves for if they were having a client come in for a pitch. They wanted the space to reflect the clients that were coming to their space as well as reflect themselves and their own culture. And I think one of the examples of how this has changed them, if you look through their Instagram feed before, it was all about their work and what they were producing, and now their Instagram feed is a lot about their culture. It's a lot about celebrating their kind of own brand of weird that they have in their office. It's about celebrating different cultures that they have, people groups they have within their office. It's really about how they use their space and about their individuals as well as their collective genius that comes together to tackle their problems. And so when we put people at the center here, it has affected every aspect of who this company is.
So to wrap it up, we're going to go back to the beginning and reiterate that, yes, we believe purpose is intention. And by now, hopefully, we all agree that purpose is always people-centered. And the only way moving forward is when when design is based on purpose. And yes, we believe better is possible through design. And we have talked a lot about Gensler and who we are and the big interventions. But we wanted to bring this today because you probably have seen it this week published in Time. I think all the news outlets have picked it up. And this was done not by Gensler, but Sam Fratello and Rael's studio out of California. And it's only to show how impactful designing with purpose can be. And it doesn't matter the scale of it. These are seesaws at the border that are really showing how the actions on both sides of the border impact each other. And it's so meaningful, so small, but so well done that we just wanted to bring it down to this crowd, to the scale of a seesaw and how meaningful that can be. So we wanted, if there is nothing else to take from us today or from this talk, is that we think that no matter where you are, your human can have impact and purpose. And we talked about asking tough questions, and we are going to leave you with 2 tough questions that we usually ask our clients. What are your superpowers, and what is your kryptonite? And we really, truly believe that the answers to that are the answers that are going to take you to make some impact in the world. Thank you.
Thank you.